Hey, pushers, it's Mr. Narimatsu with DBQ, or excuse me, LEQ lesson number one. So hopefully you already saw the introduction. If not, please take a review as we kind of go into the rubric a lot in that, which is really important. And you are currently in, again, lesson number one. So we're going to break down the question here and brainstorm for contextualization. So on these two things, you're going to need the mercantilism in 2018 mercantilism in colonial America on Schoology and the LEQ outline worksheet. Notice these are assigned today, but they're not due, right? So you have access to them, and it'll say the activity with the correct date. But these will be both due, or sorry, just the outline worksheet is all I need. Will be due on the next day after you complete it. But you will have to open it there and then turn it in later. So on this, we're just going to go ahead and take a look at the prompt itself and break it down and make sure we're good. I'm going to zoom in for you guys, and that's a little hard to see. Maybe a little too much. So first thing is this is the 2018 free response question that was released to teachers, and it's also allowed to be provided to students. You'll notice that you're going to have three choices on the day of the test. You're not expected to choose all three. So we are going to be doing this one because it's a little bit more early in the period, kind of review some items, but notice that kind of range, from the first three periods, the middle three periods to the last three periods, right? So this 1660 to 1775, this can be considered a largely period two, not period three, but largely period two. 1861 to 1900 largely is going to be period 6 and 7, but mainly 7. And then 1950 to 2000 is obviously mostly period 8 and a little bit of period 9. So you can see how the College Board will go ahead and break this up into probably 3 time periods around that area. Now, what the topic is, again, is anybody's guess, but I just want to make sure that you understand that you have a choice and that the choices will not be all 3 in just one time period, right? They're going to kind of spread it out to give students an opportunity to answer in whichever one they feel a little bit more comfortable with and have more knowledge of. Okay. So let's go ahead and do number 2. So we're going to go ahead and mark this thing up and do a lot of the things that I like to kind of show you guys. So we're going to always zigzag the directive verb, something I still continue today, and understand on the day of the test that if you don't do something like this because you're not comfortable with, I'm okay with. But I had a lot of questions on the discussion board and individual questions about what the purpose of marking this up is. And again, it's really to focus your brain, in this case the computer, and or it could be your hand and your pencil, to really focus on and break down and analyze what you're reading. Because a lot of times we make mistakes and errors in the question, and then we write a beautiful essay, but it's not answering the question, and you will get a big fat 0 for that. And so I'd hate to have something like that to happen. And this is a type of skill, only takes a few seconds to really master and put in. It takes some time to master, but it only takes a few seconds as you actually read. So I don't see much of a hurt of it, but it's up to you guys. Extent to which is kind of a academic vocabulary, because it's telling you the degree, right? How much has it actually happened? Okay, so I'm going to move over to my shapes. So the big key term is the commercial exchange system, and it really focuses on the key term of mercantilism, fostered this change, right, in the British North American economy. So, I could see students here spending a lot of time, let's see if we can move this here, spending a lot of time really making, like, maybe talk about the effect of Europe, the effect on Africa, part of the triangle trade, and really all your answers should be really focused on the British colonies, the North American British colonies. All right. So the original 13 colonies, we shouldn't be talking about Spanish Florida. We shouldn't be really talking about the Caribbean. So just to give you an idea, that's why, again, I think that this is important that you mark it up and kind of really dissect what's going on. In this case, unlike the DBQ, it's not like a key term like the Second Great Awakening. That's our time period. They actually give us a time period, 1660 to 1775 here. And you notice I boxed it. And I'm going to come back over here. So I really need to make sure I know how much, so I need to test and talk about how much did the commercial exchange systems, specifically mercantilism, foster change in the British North economy. So when I see the word change, I kind of hear the word effect, right? So my brain is now thinking it's going to be causation. So how did the cause of mercantilism affect the British economy? So how did mercantilism affect that British economy? All right. So I learned from our last time that I kind of filled this out. So we're going to focus right now just on the contextualization and making sure that we understand the question is what the question is asking us. So you have your LEQ outline worksheet. I'm going to show you mine, and you can go ahead and write this down. And look, I didn't even write this in, so I apologize for that. But we'll go ahead and put this in right now. So you can follow along with me. You can write your own questions, but in my opinion, after I read that question, after I dissect it and break it down and analyze it, I really see this as how much did mercantilism affect, and it's actually affect with the A, affect the British economy, British North American economy. Okay, most of it's done, so I apologize for this part. From I think it was 1660 to 1775, I believe it was. Let's go back, just make sure. Yep, cool. So, again, breaking it down, get the evaluate, get the extent. How much did mercantilism affect? All right, so that's what my question is going to be. And this going back to the evidence, if we just talked about evidence that related to mercantilism and related to the economy, hey, we get our point. It relates. But if you actually have evidence that talks about how it affects the economy, now we're moving into those bonus points. At least that's how I believe. And I'm just going to take one moment just to kind of talk to you guys about the fact that grading the LEQ is a little less scientific to me. The DBQ seems pretty straightforward and pretty, as I talked to another student, mathematical, right? You get it or you don't. You understand the basic meaning or you don't. You kind of err on it. This one, really, when you talk about your evidence and you're talking about your argument, when we get to those points, I'm going to be honest, I'm a little confused about what separates students. I've looked at multiple student examples, and I'm getting closer and closer, but just as a heads up, I want to provide that kind of be honest to you guys about what I see. So now that we know what the question is, it's about mercantilism, it's about British economy, and we have a time period, we need to do our contextualization prior to 1660, right? We need to do it prior to the event if we're going to do this in our introduction. Now, again, you guys can write a conclusion and talk about how mercantilism affected the British North American economy after 1775 and put that perhaps in a conclusion. And maybe you only have a thesis, inside of the, maybe you only have like a thesis inside. Sorry, I looked down here and didn't see a thesis, so I'm kind of blanking it out a little bit. But maybe your thesis is the only sentence of your introduction, and then you have a bi-paragraph, and your conclusion is theoretically your contextualization. Again, I'm going to say this multiple times to help students out. Is yes, if you blank out about what happened before 1660, you can theoretically get a contextualization point, and I'd write it as a conclusion about what happened after 1775. Right. We're going to always try to do it in the introduction because I think we have a really good sentence template and a really good way. And I think it just formulaically puts you guys into place to make sure you try to get that point there. So our prior to, I went all the way back to like, hey, why did the British, they come over here in the first place, right? So the European competition, right? There's competition in Europe, just over Europe, and then starts spreading from Europe and starts going to other places. And because of that expansion, it really starts with Magellan and some of the early explorers that go to the African coast, right? Not necessarily are going west, but we know who comes west is Christopher Columbus, right? And discovers something called the New World. So I'm going to go into that. Then I'm going to talk about our three and most important colonial actors, since it's talking about this colonial thing, the British, the English, French, and Spanish. And then I'm going to start turning this prior to from Christopher Columbus and generally stuff that happened in 1492 and the 1500s. I'm going to really start focusing on the English. Okay. And so now I'm going to describe mercantilism and how mother country and the colonies, right? And I'm getting there, right? You're going to see this. I'm not being too specific to give answers about the changes because that's going to be on my body paragraph. I'm just being general about what the definition of mercantilism is, right? And I'm going to expand on this relationship. So that's going to be what I'm going to be doing in these 6 sentences of my prior to and while when I get out. And again, some of you guys may not need to outline this. Maybe you guys can just, just write this out. But for me, I like to just take a second to make sure my order is correct, that I'm not getting any gaps and just taking a moment. And then, what's cool is when this worksheet's done, you just look on the left and you just fill in the blanks, right? Again, very I really approach this writing very mathematic and formulaic, and appropriately so because we are a social science. Okay. So there's my contextualization. I'm going to change this and make sure the thesis really comes after you kind of write some of these things. So I think that's why I didn't leave it in there. So I don't even think you need to write thesis, because once you have this down, your thesis will pop up in your brain. I'll show you guys that in our next one. So we'll see you in the next lesson. We'll go ahead and understand how to get some of these key terms, and I'll discuss the key terms so you understand how I got about them, how I remember my history from it, and kind of added stuff so that you're good to go. And we'll see you then. All right, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.